Hey, what's going on, guys? How is everybody doing? Have you ever heard the phrase, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have? Well, I'm not sure what job it is that Rosaria wants, but it sure isn't being the nun in Mondstadt's Church of Favonius that she is currently. She's cold, unpredictable, and intimidating, though seemingly with a purpose. I think it likely that there's more to this sister than meets the eye, and that her shadow work will likely unfold in future updates. We'll be talking about the stats you should be prioritizing, how to build your artifact sets, what weapons she'll get the most performance from, and what talents you should focus on. We'll be judging these from a free-to-play level all the way up to an endgame primary hero. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell, that way you never miss a video, and join our Discord, link is down in the description below. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. Rosaria can fit a variety of roles. What will work best for you will likely depend on your hero roster or what weapons you have available. These roles essentially boil down to 3: physical DPS, cryo DPS, and cryo support. So what should you generally be looking for each of these builds? Starting with a physical DPS build, the general idea will be to stack as much physical damage bonus as you can to take advantage of the best physical carry polearm, Crescent Pike. Pairing her with an electro hero like Fischl or Beidou, or a physical resistance reducer like Zhongli will ensure that her damage is at its peak. This build is focused more around the weapon Crescent Pike than anything else, however, and will not increase the strength of her skill or burst. There is another type of physical build which we will discuss later on in the video. Rosaria's cryo build will be the result of pairing her with Chongyun to actively infuse her attacks with cryo. The benefit of going down this road is that now all of Rosaria's attacks and talents now deal cryo damage, so any artifact bonuses we gain we apply across the board, or by using a Viridescent Veneer support to reduce cryo resistance, therefore increasing all of Rosaria's attacks while in Chongyun's skill radius. It also means that we can essentially create a perma-freeze team with enough Hydro application, or a perma-reverse melt comp team with the right pyro supports. Lastly, you could choose to utilize Rosaria as a support hero, either for her cryo application to spark reactions, or at max Constellations, be used as both your cryo applicator for superconduct triggers and for even more physical resistance reduction. With all of these builds, she can also provide further utility by passing off a percentage of the most valuable stat in the game to your other heroes, crit rate. She can be quite useful for those players without a fully realized roster, being able to play multiple roles. Versatility should be a key factor to look for. So let's take a look at our assets and see what exactly we have to work with. Rosaria's basic attack performs 5 rapid strikes. Her charge attack consumes stamina and lunges her forward, dealing damage along the way. The important thing to know about Rosaria's basic attacks is that she is the second highest scaling polearm wielder in the game, currently only behind Zhao. She also has the 3rd highest base attack of all the 4 stars behind Xinyan and Fischl. Combining these two factors lays the groundwork for Rosaria's potential for being a great main DPS, especially for those who don't have a full roster of 5-star heroes. Though do keep in mind that she does have a slow attack speed, similar to Kaya, and why he's never fully taken off as a carry. She has very good scaling, but her attack speed does knock her down a peg. With her skill Ravaging Confession, Rosaria swiftly vanishes and reappears behind her opponent, piercing and slashing for cryo damage. This ability has many uses, of course the most obvious being for damage and cryo application, but it can also be used to close the distance of further away enemies, making short work of enemies that are difficult to get through due to their shields, or to dodge a timely attack. Do keep in mind though that some larger enemies will be too big for you to jump behind. You'll still perform your attack, just to their front side, but you're not going to receive the 12% crit rate bonus that Rosaria gets from her first Ascension passive. That only gets added when attacking an enemy from behind. One aspect that I didn't realize I'd like as much as I did was the fact that she can close the distance between her and the next enemy very effectively. Combat feels very smooth with Rosaria because of a short cooldown of 6 seconds, which can be shortened with things like Chongyun's skill or Anima Resonance. She can very consistently use her skill again by the time she's done killing the enemy she jumped to in the first place. This has been a noticeable problem with heroes such as Razor. He hits hard, but his hits often blow enemies away, and you spend a short while chasing them down. Rosaria can make short work of these gaps and make combat feel very smooth going from enemy to enemy. Rites of Termination, Rosaria's burst, has her slash with her polearm, finishing by summoning a cryo-infused lance that plunges into the ground, both dealing cryo damage. Periodically, while the lance is still active, it will emit a cold blast, chilling enemies in its radius, dealing cryo damage over time. Upon unlocking her 4th Ascension passive, Rosaria's burst will also transfer 12% of her crit rate to her other teammates for 10 seconds. This does not extend to herself, however. An important thing to note about this ascension is something called fluff crit. There are instances of stat increases that you can see on your stat menus, such as Rosaria's first ascension passive, Bennett's burst, or food buffs. However, there are also instances that don't show up in your stat menu, such as resonance buffs and some artifact bonuses. In this instance, the most relevant being cryo resonance and blizzard strayer bonuses. These are considered fluff stats and will not carry over to your other teammates. So unfortunately, it's not going to be easy to quote-unquote cheese her 4th ascension passive and pass off 12% crit rate to your teammates. You'd have to do that the old-fashioned way. In terms of cryo application, both her skill and burst apply cryo at a 1 unit gauge rate, which is fairly standard. Her burst can apply cryo on every tick though, which goes off every 2 seconds. This is within a margin of error, if not the same as someone like Kaya. Even though every 3rd hit with his icicles will apply cryo, it fits roughly the same time frame, making her valuable as a support hero. She does suffer though from needing to be in a certain radius to apply that cryo, something that can be challenging if completing stages like in the Abyss for example, and your enemies are all strewn about, they might not clump up so easily. For talent prioritizations, her auto attack will be the talent you'll be putting more of your resources into. For 2 out of the 3 recommended macro builds, the main damage dealing aspect of her kit will be her auto attack. Between her skill and burst, focus on her skill after breaking the level 6 threshold. While her burst does receive a larger percentage increase on the initial skill damage per level, it's actually a smaller increase due to the fact that you can use Rosaria's skill twice in the same window as one burst. What makes me choose her skill over her burst though is that due to the radius of effect being not the largest, you'll end up killing the enemies in the radius quickly and may end up not taking full advantage of the damage over time there. Her skill, especially when hitting criticals, can scale very high, and I found that I was actually relying on this attack more so than her burst in combat. For Constellations, wow, it's kind of been a while since we've had a new character where Constellations might actually matter, right? Rosaria's Constellation 1 will increase her own attack speed and normal attack damage by 10% for 4 seconds after any critical hit. If you're looking for a baseline Constellation to look for your DPS builds, this is it. Constellation 2 increases the duration of her burst by 4 seconds up to 12. For support builds, this is what you should aim for. Constellations 3 and 5 are typical skill and burst promotions. Constellation 4 will generate 5 energy for Rosaria whenever she gets a critical hit with her skill, though it can only trigger once out of the 2 instances of damage. Lastly, Constellation 6 decreasing the physical resistance of any enemies caught by her burst by 20% for 10 seconds, not only being able to improve her own damage on a physical build, but also furthers her potential of being a cryo support on a physical team for heroes such as Razor or Kaching. Rosaria's best artifact sets will of course depend on what build you're opting to use her for. Let's start with her physical build. The 2 sets you should be looking at to complete are a 2-piece set of Gladiator's Finale and 2-piece set of Bloodstained Chivalry, or a 4-piece set of Blizzard Strayer. A lot of people may look at these two and come to the conclusion that the first set is better for a physical build, for the physical damage bonus and how it interacts with the undisputed champion of physical weapons, Crescent Pike. But right now, it actually looks like Blizzard Strayer beats it out by just a hair, even with imperfect uptime. So here's what I would ultimately suggest if you're looking at which of these 2 sets to invest in, because let's face it, they require 2 completely different farming paths. I would recommend Blizzard Strayer as her best set here. Even if when all the testing and dust settles, the Gladiator and Bloodstained set comes out slightly ahead in the damage race, the fact is that Blizzard Strayer is going to be the best set for our cryo build, and it's not really going to be close. If you're going for the cryo build, which is my preferred build, Chongyun is basically a necessity so that all of her base attacks turn into cryo damage. With that in mind, we'll be benefiting from the 15% cryo damage bonus that would be lost on the physical build, but we gain so much natural crit rate from the set bonus that we can focus heavily on crit damage instead, reducing the strain on your substat farming needs. For a supporting build, at least 2-piece Noblesse should be on her. The other 2 you can kind of leave up to what you have available. 2-piece Blizzard Strayer will offer you the most damage increase on your skill and burst over a set like Gladiator, or if you want more energy recharge, Scholar, or Exile pieces is what you could use in this slot. For main stats on our artifact, she's a pretty straightforward DPS build. An attack timepiece will offer the greatest increase in damage. If you're able to get her to C4, energy recharge is for sure not needed, but I could see an argument for it here if you don't have that constellation, though I would still recommend against it, unless playing her as a support. Her cup should correlate to your specific build, whether that be physical or cryo. And lastly, her circlet, either crit rate or crit damage. If you're running a physical build without the Blizzard Strayer set, or a support build, you'll likely want crit rate. But if you're playing a cryo build or anything with a Blizzard Strayer 4-piece, this should for sure be crit damage, as it's likely you'll be playing her with cryo resonance as well, And with her skill adding 12% crit rate as well, attacking frozen enemies you'll have a 72% crit rate, and that's without accounting for artifact substats. Now for her weapons, and this is the part where I'm going to say it depends a lot, because her weapons are going to heavily depend on how you choose to build her. Starting off with her physical weapons, in 9.5 cases out of 10, Crescent Pike is going to be the superior weapon, even over 5-star alternatives. Between the physical damage bonus increasing the damage of her basic attacks and the weapon's procs, the procs being able to crit independently and also scaling off any other physical bonuses, it's really just a powerhouse of a weapon. That being said, this weapon is not as powerful on Rosaria as it is on other fast attackers such as Zhongli. The difference is small in their attack speed, but noticeable. There is a discussion to be made for Dragonspine Spear, since both are craftable weapons, but here are my general thoughts on the weapons. Yes, it has almost twice as much physical damage bonus as Crescent Pike. And yes, the passive can hit quite hard, especially because Rosaria can apply cryo so consistently. But it's on a 10-second cooldown and the base attack is over 100 points lower at max level comparatively speaking. So in what instance would Dragonspine Spear be better? In the instance that you want to use Rosaria on a quick swap team where she's your main DPS but doesn't spend large quantities of time on the field. She instead swaps in for a couple hits, gets her big hits off of Superconduct and procs her spear, then switches out to cycle through your sport's abilities. In this instance, I'd put this craftable spear above the other. Your 5-star weapons will depend on your artifact choice depending on what substat you need. Skyward Spine is actually quite powerful here, as all of the substats in the passive are qualities that Rosaria actively wants, and the passive hit can actually scale quite high on a physical build. For cryo builds, the hierarchy stays pretty consistent, though we obviously leave behind the physical damage weapons we had previously. For this build, because 4-piece Blizzard Destroyer is the set that should be played once you get to an endgame build, the crit rate weapons fall in priority a lot. Even though they do a lot of damage, you'll get to the point quite easily where you have over 100% crit rate, essentially wasting stats. Especially a weapon like Deathmatch that'll put you over 100% by itself. Her best in slot in the build depends, again, on how you're building her, and another factor that I take into consideration for my personal builds. Vortex Vanquisher is quite strong if you're using it on a team with consistent shield units like Zhongli or Diona, but without those, it'll fall behind Staff of Homa. Now, Staff of Homa is stronger than Skyward Spine, but I'll tell you why I really like this weapon and why this is my choice for what's going to be living on my Rosaria. Because I have all 3 of these weapons, and no, that is not intended to be a flex, but my Staff of Homa lives on my Hu Tao. And if I'm not using her, it lives on my Zhongli. Otherwise, he's on Vortex Vanquisher. Currently, there isn't a hero I would prefer Skyward Spine on than Rosaria. That's not to say it's the last chosen in gym class weapon. It's actually a very powerful option. I'd probably put it between Homa and Vanquisher, but because it's so high on average for all of her other builds, it makes the most sense to keep it on her if you choose to experiment and change her up from time to time. For support builds, I would prioritize crit rate and energy recharge weapons a bit higher, since these are the stats that will be best suited for a supporting role, and because you probably won't be playing 4-piece Blizzard Destroyer on a support build. In conclusion, Rosaria can play a multitude of roles to best fit your playstyle or current hero roster. She has a very fluid playstyle that allows her to close gaps quickly, and when she does, you don't really want to be standing on the other side of her weapon because this nun will hit you hard. Hopefully you guys have found this guide useful and it will help you in building your own Rosaria. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell, that way you never miss a video, and join our Discord, link will be down in the description below. But guys, that's all I have for today. Hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.